Well, I hope you had a good Christmas and welcome back. Last week we had a few folks miss the memo and showed up. And at about 9:15, I got a text saying, hey, there's a guy here in the building and the alarm is going off. Apparently it wasn't locked very well. So anyway, if that was you, I apologize. But I guess the police showed up. It was the whole thing. But we had some folks get here in time to turn it off and everything's okay. But how was your break? Did you have a good break? How many of you, let me just hear, did you have a good break? Yeah. How many of you are glad it's over? Yes. Okay, I sound like parents say that louder than everybody else. We had a good time, just a few of my favorite moments, so many great moments, but I want to show you first this picture, explain what's happening here. I was going against my son-in-law in chess. My son wasn't there that day, but I was going up against him in chess. And in case you're wondering what's happening, my daughter, Trevi, and her husband, Addie, can speak French fluently. So they're strategizing in French. So I gave my wife those headphones because I have a new app that I can hear what they're saying, and it translates it for me. So she was supposed to interpret for me. But instead, she started speaking in Spanish. So Trevi was learning Spanish and speaking French. At one point, apparently my wife said that your dad can speak Spanish like an 8-month-old, which once she told me what she said, I was highly offended. And I think it's closer to a 2-year-old because 8-month-olds don't even talk. But we had a fun time. By the way, just a quick little, if you don't know this, do you know how do you describe someone who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. Someone who speaks 2? Bilingual. Someone who speaks 1? An American. Or a gringo, at least, right? So anyway, that was fun. And then I had a couple of reenactment moments, although, well, you'll see. The first one I'll show you, these are my cousins. Back in 1990 is the top. 35 years later, I'm no longer the tallest of the group. You can see Susie still has her little lamb chop. I'm the only one that had a shirt similar. I could not find pants that blue. I don't think they make them like that anymore. Since 1990. And then I got together with some of my high school buddies. And here we are. We're not actually reenacting that, but the same 4 guys. I'm the only one that's in the same spot. But yeah, class of 1990, 35 years later. You can see the Striper reference here my buddy Craig's wearing. If you don't know Striper, you need to get to know Striper. Just kidding. Please don't. It's too late. All right. So, in the midst of all this, right, Christmas is fun and lots of memories. But here's the thing that I'm excited about. Right after Christmas comes a new year. And it's great to see family. It's great to see friends. But sometimes you can get pulled back into the past. How many of you stayed in the bedroom where you grew up with your parents this week? And it's kind of weird, right? When we first moved out, got married and come back, and we would stay in my old bedroom. It was like my mom had turned it into an homage to me, to all my trophies and posters. It was really creepy. And so, or a memorial, tribute, or whatever. But when you have a chance to start afresh, it's a gift. This next year, what if at the end of this year, you're not the same person you are today? And sometimes we might make goals, and goals can be good. But what if instead of goals, we decided to just live a whole new way of life? So today we're talking about the exchange. We just exited a season of exchanges. We exchange gifts with one another. We exchange the way our house is decorated. We exchange what we eat. Way more sugar and baked goods, right, than we normally would. Maybe we gave some PTO days in exchange for time with family or time to rest. So we give and we get. That's the part of having a generous heart and living in community with others. But today I want to talk about the great exchange. Here's what I'm talking about. It's about giving up our way of doing things, our sin patterns, our personal philosophies in exchange for the work of Jesus on the cross and his way of living. Let me say that again. It's about giving up our way of doing things, our sin patterns, our personal philosophies in exchange for the work of Jesus on the cross and his way of living. See, if you're here and you're exploring God, I want to let you in on a secret. We're hoping that you discover a relationship with God as we have, and we've found that relationship with God through Jesus. And the invitation that Jesus has for us is to not just to follow him, not just to experience forgiveness, although that's part of it, but actually become new people, to become transformed, to actually see reality differently. And so one of the ways to help us in that is reading from the New Testament. We see these letters written mostly by an apostle, a man named Paul, who started churches. And these letters he's writing back to these men and women in these churches, or sometimes to the leaders of these churches. And it's hard for us to fathom how groundbreaking things were. You had the Jewish community and Gentiles meeting together in homes. Before, they had nothing in common. Now the only thing they had in common was they believed that the Jewish Messiah had given his life for all, and his name is Jesus. And so these diverse, multi-ethnic communities were springing up throughout the Roman world, and in those churches was some really miraculous things, some beautiful things, but also a lot of chaos, a lot of conflict, a lot of heresies, a lot of immorality. In fact, in one of those letters, he's writing to the Corinthians, and he calls them to the saints in Corinth, which is a really beautiful thing to be described as, a saint. But then you read the rest of the letters and you start to realize these people don't sound like saints. They were getting drunk with communion. You may be thinking, is that why we give out little thimble-size drinks now? Well, ours isn't even alcoholic, right? And there was all sorts of immorality. In fact, there was one guy who was sleeping with his mom. We hope it's his mother-in-law, but that's even not so good either, right? And then you see these people that were just fighting and arguing, and you begin to realize, oh, maybe there's a lot of hope for us, right? The early church was filled with broken people who were called saints by God, but weren't yet living that way. They hadn't fully grasped the change that had happened. Being called a saint is an invitation to live out the new reality of who you are in Christ when you choose to follow him. So let's read from chapter 5 in the second letter to the church at Corinth. For Christ's love compels us, because we are convinced that one died for all, and therefore all died. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. I mean, listen to those beautiful words, this promise from God, that when you choose to follow him, when you choose to die to yourself, to instead begin seeing things the way God sees them, you begin to see people differently. You begin to see yourself differently. When you lean into your faith, when you lean into community, suddenly you rise above circumstances. What if in 2026, you and I become different people? We have a faith bigger than our circumstances. Certainly a lot of our goals might be associated with our circumstances. We want something to change or some things to change, and that's good. But what if we change and then it doesn't matter what our circumstances might be? The last verse, verse 21, is where Martin Luther, a German theologian, who broke away from the institutional church that existed in the 1500s during his day. He coined this phrase, the wondrous exchange. Over time and with the development of the English language, it's now been called the great exchange. That we are reconciled with God, made new, and we bring reconciliation to the world around us. We experience his peace and his presence, and we bring that peace and presence wherever we go. Except the great exchange has even more nuance than I give up something and in return I receive something else. And it's so nuanced because we're human beings. We're not just objects with no intellect or emotion or free will. You see, we make daily choices in the process of the great exchange. We are completely transformed because of who Jesus is. He stands in our place, and at the same time, we're transforming to become more like him. The way that Martin Luther would say it is simul justus et peccator, which means at the same time justified and a sinner. Saints in standing, in right standing with God, on a journey to become more like Jesus. Now, to shed light on this intricate journey of walking with Jesus, it's important that we understand that when we say yes to following Jesus, he makes us new. And we now need to live it out. We are clothed with his righteousness, allowing us to be transformed. We're still flawed and finite people. We have not yet arrived, none of us. There's always something that we need to overcome. And sometimes God heals us instantaneously of things that used to plague us when we choose to follow him. And other times it might take a journey towards healing. And then once we've overcome that, we discover something new to overcome. It's not a one-time transaction that happens in just a season of our life. He's inviting us to something more. None of us have arrived. There's something deeper for every single one of us in this new year. See, Christmas can kind of lull us into a whole different way of living. If we're not careful, we can go from shopping for others to now start buying ourselves the things we don't necessarily need. We can abandon the way our homes look and keep up our Christmas decor just so that we don't have to take it down. Some of you might live in neighborhoods like I do, where that's very true of some of our neighbors. Other times it may be forgetting the disciplines, and then we just keep eating like it's Christmas, and that 5 pounds becomes 10 pounds and more. Or maybe it's falling in love with this idea of rest and forgetting how beautiful it is to have purpose and to work and to provide. And many times we look at the great exchange in the same way as a seasonal transaction. We think, I believe in Jesus and he forgave me and now I'm all set and ready to go. We think, well, I went to church in December, so I'm good for a while. Or I spent time with family and friends and don't have to see them again until their birthdays. Or I gave money, or I gave time, and I don't have to do that for a while. Or I spent time with my kids, and thank goodness they're going back to school, right? But what if God's inviting us into something different, not just changing, but transforming? No one really says those things, but by our actions, that's how we live them out. What if instead of going back into the status quo, we experience something deeper, more profound, more of his presence in 2026? The truth about the great exchange is that we are not just invited to a new spiritual life. We are invited to a whole new way of doing life. The metaphor of this great exchange sets us on a different course, a different race, so to speak. One of my favorite passages in the New Testament comes from Hebrews chapter 12. Listen to these beautiful words. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. See, this is a long race we're invited into. We're invited into a lifelong journey of becoming who God's created us to be. Learning to die to self and become alive more and more like the one we follow. And when things are hard, when things get difficult, when we're overwhelmed with life, when we're unable to find joy or peace, we're to fix our eyes on Jesus, remembering all that he endured for you and for me. This passage, it says, for the joy set before him. Many scholars think what they're describing in this passage is that he was willing to endure the cross, the shame of the cross, the pain and agony of all that he went through during that Passion Week because of the joy before him. The joy before him was you. The joy before him was knowing that if I endure this, if I give my life, take upon myself the sins of humanity, it will kill me. But the Father can bring me back to life. And through this sacrifice, anyone who calls on my name can have a relationship with the Father. You were the joy set before him. His desire for relationship with you, to know you, for you to understand how loved you are, the beauty of what he's inviting you into. There are two overarching umbrellas for this first part of the Great Exchange. The way of Jesus causes us to run the race in the direction of Jesus. See, so often we are doing our own thing, running in our own direction, and then asking God to bless what we're doing. Instead of starting the year afresh and saying, God, what do you want from me? What do you have for me? And the way of Jesus also causes us to run the race in the manner of Jesus. It means becoming more like Jesus, seeing people the way he sees them, treating people the way he treats them. If you look at that last phrase from Hebrews chapter 12, it says, do not grow weary and lose heart. This could also be translated as, do not grow sick and lose your soul. See, we live in a broken world where there is a spiritual battle trying to keep us sick, trying to keep us from experiencing freedom and the life that God intended. And the pain that we've experienced, the trauma that we've experienced, the ways that others have hurt us and the ways that we have hurt others, the shame that we carry, can all get in the way of what God has for us. But he's inviting us into something new. So how do we really follow Jesus in this new year? It reminds me of that moment when one of the religious leaders came up to Jesus trying to trap him, trying to trick him into saying something that would get the crowd to turn against him. And he asked, of all the commands, and there are 611, some say 613 commands in the Hebrew scriptures, of all the commands, what's the most important? And Jesus, without hesitation, explained, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, at first, it sounds like, did Jesus misunderstand? He didn't ask for the top two. He asked for the one great command. See, I think Jesus understood that you cannot really say you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength and not love your neighbor. And let's be honest, you can't really love your neighbor without God's help. And so he's inviting us in the simplest way of what it means to follow Jesus. It means to love God more, and it means to love people more. And so how do you do that? It's by spending time with God and spending time in community. Time with God on our own, but also time in community with others. Next Sunday, we kick off our season with Pray First. We've been doing this for the last several years. We begin the January and August, kind of new ministry seasons with 3 weeks of prayer, 21 days of prayer. And prayer can be powerful. What if every day in 2026 you stopped to spend time talking to God and listening to God? Just sharing your heart with him and listening to his heart for you. Asking for guidance, bringing before him the struggles that you're going through, but also those that others are going through. You know, it's really been beautiful. In the last couple of years, we have a weekly prayer email that goes out. And if you want to be a part of that, just email me at eric@gatewaychurch.com, and we can either put your prayer request on there, or you can start just receiving the prayer request so that you can start praying with us. But we've had so many remarkable things happen. I want to tell you a quick story of a guy whose first experience at church was here just a few weeks ago. One of our own, Gertcha, was riding in an Uber with this guy, and basically he began to describe his life as also being from Turkey, and his experience here had been terrible. His finances were in shambles because he'd been scammed by somebody. He was struggling with getting the right kind of work, and that was creating stress in his marriage. I mean, his wife had been hoping to have children, but that wasn't working either. And she explained to him, well, why don't you come to church with me? And he said, I'm an atheist. He had lost his parents when he was 8 years old, grew up in an orphanage. If there was a God, he'd given up on God even as a child. And she encouraged him, well, just come. You know, what do you have to lose? If he's not real, nothing new will happen. But if he is, maybe everything can happen. And so he came. And it happened to be a day we were doing a parent-baby dedication. It was the wrong day. The child had been sick, so we had to delay it. But he said that while we were praying for this baby, and the whole group of us were praying for this baby, he was really moved. And so he prayed for the first time in his life. He said, Jesus, if you're real, give me a new reason to live. He goes home that day, and his wife wasn't feeling well, so he takes her to the doctor, and come to find out she's pregnant. He sends me a text with an audio recording of the heartbeat of this baby. That's pretty good for your first prayer ever. Isn't that amazing? Here's the thing. What you begin to realize when it comes to connecting with God through prayer is that sometimes God says yes in remarkable, miraculous ways. Sometimes he says, not yet, but let's keep talking about it. And other times he says, you don't really want that. He says, no, that's not what's best. As I've said so many times over the years, a quote that's really helped me is God answers our prayers the way we would if we knew everything he knows. But what if we made prayer and connecting with God in prayer a priority in your life? What if there are things, even if you're here and you're skeptical, that you just began to put before God? What will it hurt? And then in the beauty of that, God sometimes will move in miraculous ways. Next Sunday, we start something, as I mentioned, called Pray First. And if you want to go through this experience with us, you can just text the number you see on the screen with the word prayer, and it'll start to give you kind of guidance in that journey, taking you through something called the Pause app for 21 days. And I want to invite you to try something a little different. Come a bit earlier on Sundays. We're going to create this space as a place to pray. Maybe the 15 minutes ahead of the service, we'll have on the screen just kind of guidance to use that time. We were kind of inspired by UT, the football team. You guys heard of them? They had a good end of their year, right? And apparently years ago, in order to fire up the fans, they say, come early, be loud, and stay late. Any of you heard that? Yeah, you remember. And so we're doing something similar. What if in the month of January, you came a little bit earlier, and during the service, you just sang your heart out. You were just fully here. You just got rid of all the distractions and maybe even considered staying late. We're going to create the space for you to experience God perhaps a little bit differently over the next few Sundays. I want to encourage you to be here every Sunday, but be part of this Pray First season with us. And maybe for you, connecting with God includes not just talking to him, but also listening to him through reading the scriptures. If you've never done this, I have something I'd love for you to consider, and that's to read through the New Testament in a year. It's just one chapter a day, 5 chapters a week, or if that seems like too much, maybe just go through the Gospel of Matthew with us. It'll just take 6 weeks, 1 chapter a day, 5 chapters a week, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. You just pray, God, if you're real, speak to me, or God, show me what you have for me. Then you read through the passage and you watch the video that I've created. And again, it's designed, if you're new to the Bible, overwhelmed by the Bible, it could be very helpful. Some context of what you just read and some insights that help you apply it. Then you just write down in your journal, okay, here's what I'm going to try to do differently. If you want to do this with us, we've got a podcast called Start Here, the New Testament. Just look for that. on wherever you go to podcasts. Or if it's easier, just go to my website. Go to the very bottom and you'll see a reading plan and how to even join us in that, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok. But when you spend time with God, you will be amazed at how he shows up for you. Even if it's not in that moment, but throughout the day, the conversations, the lyrics in the song, like suddenly you begin to see God's speaking all the time. The problem is, too often we're not listening. You know, these last 2 weeks, I did something I hadn't done before. I decided to just not listen. I've been listening to a lot of sermons and podcasts and worship music, and I just kind of felt compelled, maybe prompted by God, just to spend less time on my phone. And so try to stay away from social media videos and the things that can kind of suck you down that wormhole. And it was amazing how quiet things are when you don't have earbuds in, when you're not listening to music, and just trying to spend a little more time connecting with God, praying throughout the day. Just a little less noise. And it was so amazing. No news, by the way. I didn't know what was going on around the world until last night. Found out there's quite a bit. And so, but just this season of just getting rid of the distractions and the noise. Spending time with God, God always shows up. It may be in just the most remarkable ways or the ways you least expect him. But it's not only about loving God, it's also about loving people. It's about time with God on your own, but also time with God in community. And this is a new season, so even consider what will be my group in 2026. We have new groups starting even this week. Restore kicks off tomorrow night. Maybe it's being part of that group. You can go to gatewaychurch.com/events for several of these, or you can even keep an eye out for the newsletter going out in the next couple days. Just discern, okay, is it restore? Is it learning how to overcome some of those habits and hang-ups? Being a part of a community that's helping in that on Monday nights. Or maybe it's about exploring faith, really diving in deep, whether you're new or you're still not sure, having dinner once a week on Wednesday nights for about 8 weeks at Alpha. That one you can go to gatewaychurch.com/alpha. Or Thursday night, we have for all the men, if you're not in a men's group or you're interested in a men's group, we're coming together around the fire pit. It could be 80, it could be 30, we don't know. But either way, we'll be there together to kick off the new year. Just email me for details, or if you know Steve Granger, ask him for his address, eric@gatewaychurch.com. And then next week, in the midst of Pray First, we have a prayer course. Maybe you've wanted to dive deeper to understand what it really means to pray and the different types of prayer. That's on Monday nights here in the auditorium. Or Thursday nights, we're bringing 3 groups together, our 18 to 25, our 20s and 30s, and our singles groups are coming together Thursday nights, not this Thursday, but a week from now, just to learn how to hear God. We even have something for 4th and 5th graders called Born to Lead. It kicks off a week from Sunday. Maybe just find a group in this new season. Some of our groups serve on Sunday. They serve in the first service and come to the second. And if your group is primarily serving, it's also a place where you can grow. Or if you're in a group that's about growing, encourage your group to go out and serve together. What if 2026 we knew who our people were, the ones that were in it with us, and not just going to have our needs met, but going asking God, how do you want me to serve these new friends in my life? And here's the beautiful thing. When you love God and when you love people, when you allow him to change your vantage point of life, he actually changes how you experience life. Listen to this beautiful passage from Galatians chapter 5. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. Right? Doesn't that sound like the world in which we live? Biting and devouring each other. But we're invited to something different. Instead, I say walk by the Spirit. And when you focus on the Spirit, you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And then he describes what a life like the world, like the flesh is like. He says the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. He says, I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Years ago, when we were in Los Angeles, a young woman got up and shared her testimony, her story, and she read this passage and then said, before I was following Jesus, I did all of these things. And then she looked at the passage again and said, well, not the orgies, but everything else. And we're like, okay, that's enough. We don't need to know anymore. But then she went on to describe, like, that's not who she is anymore. What I love about this passage is the early church, the people he was writing, this describes them. This describes us. One or two or multiple of these could describe you and me. But what if in the new year, instead of these characteristics describing us, what if our family, our friends, our neighbors, people we work with say, but there's something different. That's who you were, but now I see in you the fruit of the Spirit. Verse 22, which is love and joy and peace and forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other. What if we exchanged this life as we've lived, influenced by the world, and let all of that go, and instead chose to live a life following the Spirit of God, the one who created us, the one who loves us enough to give his life for us, the one who gives life, the one who wants to be closer than even the breath of air we take to survive. The invitation for us is to experience this great exchange. And I want to invite you to pull out that card you received when you came in. If you didn't get one, just hold up your hand. We even have some pins. There's a few just right there. Anyone else? We even have pins. If you need a pin, raise your hand. We also have pins. Some of our connection and greeting team will be walking around. Just when you see them walking around, just raise your hand. Let me explain what I want you to do with this. I want you just to spend some moments with God and just ask him, God, what are you wanting me to exchange? What are you wanting me to surrender? And it could be a struggle. It could be a sin, something that has entangled you for far too long, but you're ready to let that go. But I want you to not just write on here what you're trying to overcome, but also what you're wanting to replace it with. If you're struggling with worry and anxiety, add that the antidote is peace. Don't focus on not worrying, then you're going to be worrying about worrying. Focus on peace and the peace that he brings. And then after the song that they will be playing during our time of reflection, you've had a chance to fill this out. You can either take this with you, put it somewhere where you'll be able to see it, and remember, this is the old me, but I'm focusing on the new me. Not on my own strength, not by mustering up the summoning the energy, but by leaning more into community, leaning more into your relationship with God. And if some of you want us to pray for this, just add your name and you can put it in the little offering box that's over in the side over here or in the lobby. Just raise your hand if you need another pen or a card. But let's take advantage of this moment to connect with God and his heart for you. What is he wanting to free you from? So during this song, spend this moment with God. Let him speak to you and write that down.